Well, more reaction now, and I'm joined by Labour's Yvette Cooper, Theresa May from the Conservatives, and the Lib Dems, Danny Alexander. Well, the obvious question goes to you all. I'll start with you, Yvette Cooper. You're right beside me. How did your man do?
I think he did really well. I think it was a very interesting debate. I think that Gordon had very strong proposals on all of the policy areas, vision for the future. I think that Gordon won on the substance. I think, curiously, that Nick Clegg probably won on the style, and David Cameron rather got squeezed in between.
Well, quite an admission, though. Nick Clegg won on the style.
Yeah, but he didn't have very much substance behind it. There were quite a lot of contradictions in what he said. He had a nice manner, and probably did better than David Cameron on that.
Okay.
But I think when it came to the real content, the vision for the future, the actual hard policies, that's where I think that Gordon Brown, by far and away, did the best.
OK, no doubt, Danny Alexander, you'll take that Nick Clegg won on style from Yvette Cooper, but do you think he went further than that and won on the substance as well?
I think he won on the style and the substance. I think on a number of the questions, it was Nick Clegg's ideas that were actually the focus of the debate, on immigration, on tax, on crime too. It was the ideas, the substantive ideas that Nick Clegg were putting forward. But I think more than that, he demonstrated this evening what he set out to do, which was to show the people of this country that there is an alternative to the tired, old way of doing politics that Labour and the Conservative Party have done for too long, that we can do something different in this country. And that's what he set out to achieve, and I think he achieved it fantastically well tonight.
I can tell you the latest we're hearing from the instant polling that's going on. The Sun YouGov poll gives Nick Clegg a big win there. What do you feel about that, Theresa May? Did Mr Cameron, he was in the middle there, did he rather get squeezed?
Not at all. I thought David did extremely well, and what I think David showed tonight is a man in command, a man ready to lead the country, but he also crucially talked directly to people about the issues that really matter to him, and that's why he was so strong and won on the issues on the National Health Service, on what's happening in schools, on issues like long-term care, crime, immigration, and I think he showed that it's the Conservatives that have got the ideas for the future. He had the answers to those questions that show how we can actually make the change that this country needs.
But I bet you didn't expect him to be out-slicked tomorrow, Yvette Cooper's phrase there, out-slicked by Nick Clegg.
Well, I know David is a man of substance. He showed tonight the real answers to the problems that people are facing, and crucially, I think what he showed in all his answers is that he's been listening to people across the country and he understands the problems that people are really facing. So on those issues like the National Health Service, he knows the concerns that people have, and he really answered those questions so well and actually came out in the lead on those.
That's Gordon Brown's strong suit, isn't it? That's meant to be where he really hits home.
I mean, I thought that David Cameron had a lot of anecdotes, but actually very little answers. You know, we learnt that he's not prepared to keep up the funding for the police. We learned he's not prepared to keep up the funding for schools. Well, he was very, Gordon Brown pressed him on that a couple of times. Would he match the funding for the police? And he was, he ducked that question repeatedly. He is not prepared to back the funding for the neighbourhood police that we need. And I think there were a lot of areas where both Nick Clegg and David Cameron had a lot of anecdotes, but they didn't have the actual policy proposals to solve the problems.
But just on that point.
The real person who didn't have an answer to the question was Gordon Brown, who had no answer to this issue about the national insurance rise, Labour's jobs tax that will kill recovery, that will take money out of the National Health Service. Now, by stopping that, by avoiding that, we can actually make sure that cancer drugs are available for patients. It was Gordon Brown who had no answer on that crucial issue of national insurance.
I was just going to say, do you know what? As I listen to you two having this spat, I can go all Nick Clegg here and say, there you two go again, and Danny Alexander, Nick Clegg come down the middle and say, look, we are the new brew.
There they go again. The two old parties having a silly row which doesn't actually mean anything. What people want is something different in this country. What Nick Clegg showed tonight is that the radical ideas that we're putting forward on fairer taxes, on investment in education, on being honest about how you deal with the deficit, are the ones that are right and that people want to hear. I think that's why he set out what he achieved to do tonight in the first of three debates, which was just demonstrate to the people of this country that there is an alternative to the old way of doing politics.
Well, isn't there a danger? I mean, isn't there just a danger here now that the Lib Dems have always, in a way it's been said, been able to get away with, some policies that people don't really examine in that great detail. If Mr Clegg's done so well here, for instance, a £17 billion tax cut, it dwarfs the Tories and their £6 billion, people are going to start really looking very hard at things like that.
I really hope that they do, because I think that when you look at our manifesto, which I wrote, I think you will find that these policies do add up. David Cameron and Gordon Brown had a chance to ask all those questions to Nick Clegg tonight. They did ask some of them. Many of the questions were focused around the Liberal Democrat ideas on immigration, on the points-based migration system and the regional work permits, on taxation, on the deficit, where neither Labour or the Tories even bothered to show the respect for the public of setting out in detail the finances behind their ideas. I'd welcome that scrutiny.
I think it is worth, I think there are a lot of contradictions actually in what Nick Clegg was saying. At one point he seemed to be saying that we should cut waste, another point he seemed to be saying that we shouldn't, and so I think there were a lot of contradictions in a whole series of places. I do think that there should be more scrutiny.
So that is, you are
but he had a
nice
chatty style, of course.
Okay,
so that went down
nice
well
chatty style. I mean, does that go for the
Conservatives'
attitude to the Lib Dems?
I think Nick Clegg played a predictable game, and actually in a number of areas, like on his immigration policy, he wasn't actually able to back up the claims that he was making. But I find it so disappointing. Danny Alexander just now, when we were talking about Labour's jobs tax that will kill recovery, that will cost the National Health Service money, he dismissed it as a silly argument about something that meant nothing. And I think that 100 business leaders across this country, large businesses, have said this is something that will cost people their jobs.
Okay.
That's why we need to stop it.
But David Cameron also repeatedly did not respond to the issue about why on earth do you want to take money out of the economy right now that could kill the recovery, could push us into a double-dip recession, rather than, and he wants to talk about long-term in the future,
we'll
not
talk about
actually
that more later. But just very quickly, just on other aspects of these debates, we're told is very important. Humour. Who got the first laugh? Perhaps the man we least expected, Gordon Brown. He got the second laugh as well.
I think he got 2 laughs, didn't he?
Might have heard them before at Prime Minister's questions, but a lot of people had.
Well, and what we saw tonight was the Nick Clegg, I think, that Parliament tries to hide, that Labour and Tory MPs try to shout down, that the way our political system works day in, day out, through outside election time, tries to suppress. What people have seen tonight is when the three leaders are together.
I mean, no big moments from Mr. Cameron on the humour front.
I think what David showed today was a man who's in command and a man who is ready to lead this country because he understands the issues that this country faces, and he's the man who has the answers for the future of this country that can take this country forward.
I don't think actually that he had either the style or the substance this evening, and that was, I think, the interesting revelation of the debate. I thought also that Gordon was very relaxed all the way through the debate.
Okay, well, let's see if he's relaxed next week at the Sky News debate on the 22nd. No doubt I'll see you all again there. Thank you very much indeed, Theresa May, Danny Alexander, and Yvette Cooper there with their first take on what we've heard here tonight in Manchester, and the latest polling figures on who did best. We're getting here is Nick Clegg, runaway winner on 51%, David Cameron trailing in on 29%, Gordon Brown